from Krishna. And we are going to begin continuing from where we left off, reading. We were reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Trying to find where we left off. Yeah. I believe it's Adi Leela 1339. Is that correct? Chaitanya Dasi, is that correct? 1339 is where we begin?
No, it's Madhya 2:9.
Madhya 2:9. Okay. That means, okay. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, Chapter 2, Text 9. Let me see what you have in there. You have it in the chat? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would also run very fast across the sand dunes, mistaking them for Govardhan. As he ran, he would wail and cry loudly. Purport. Because of the winds of the sea, sometimes the sand would form dunes. Such sand dunes are called Chataka Parvata. Instead of seeing these sand dunes simply as hills of sand, the Lord would take them to be Govardhan Hill. Sometimes he would run towards these dunes at high speed, crying very loudly, expressing the state of mind exhibited by Radharani. Thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and his pastimes. His state of mind brought him the atmosphere of Vrindavan and Govardhan Hill. Thus, he enjoyed the transcendental bliss of separation and meeting. You know, one interesting fact is that when you love something, especially like if you love a place where you grew up and then you go somewhere and then you it looks like that place and you say, oh, this reminds me of the beach that I used to go to when I was a kid, or this reminds me of the park that I used to go to when I was a kid. This reminds me of whatever it reminds you of, right? One time, devotees were walking, I believe it was in India. They were walking somewhere, and the devotee said, oh, Prabhupada, this reminds me of such and such a place. And Prabhupada said, yes, because you're attached to that place wherever you go, it will remind you of that place. So we see the same thing happening here in a transcendental way. Mahaprabhu sees a hill, and it reminds him of Govardhan, or he'll see water, it will remind him of Jamuna. But that's the nature of love. But, and so when something reminds you of something and you're separated from that something, then that attachment for that something can become stronger. So that's what's happening with Mahaprabhu. He's being reminded, and that reminding him is causing him to feel separation. And that separation is causing him to achieve what it is he came to achieve, which is, what did he come to achieve? He wanted to feel what Radharani is feeling. So he's completely now immersed in experiencing what Radharani is feeling. He's like now in Jagannath Puri, he is fulfilling the reason, his internal reason for coming. The external reason was to spread. The internal reason was to relish Krishna consciousness, and now that's all he's doing now. So this is a symptom. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said something that I love. It's so simple, but it's so beautiful. He said, when you're an atheist, everywhere you look convinces you that there's no God. And when you're a theist, everywhere you look convinces you that there is God. Because you'll see God everywhere. Now, the way he said it was, for the devotee, he sees God everywhere, and for the atheist, he sees God nowhere. Right? So that's a beginning stage. So somehow we see Krishna, we see it, an amazing aspect of nature, and we think, wow, it's amazing. There must be a God to have created that. So it reminds us of Krishna. But what's going on here with Mahaprabhu is very specific. It's not energy. It's not reminding him of Krishna's energy. It's because of his deep love for Krishna that everything he sees is reminding him. And we can, I don't want to say you could imitate this, but you can do this. When I'm in Mexico, the temple is near a park. And in this park, there's an area that's fenced off, which used to be, I think it may have been the palace of the king. Who's here? Anuradha's not here. I think it may have been the palace of the king when, at one point, when Mexico was conquered by whoever conquered them. I forget the details. But it's on a hill. And you can walk around it, and there's a palace on top. So just like Govardhan has a temple on top, and there's this hill, and in many ways it looks like Govardhan. So when we go there, I tell the devotees, this is Govardhan Hill. We will see this is Govardhan Hill, and we will walk around it. And so you can actually do that, or you can see a river, and you can imagine this is Jamuna, or this is Ganga, and it inspires remembrance. So it's not wrong to do that. It's not like you've become a sahajya, but we do that to evoke remembrance. Or sometimes I'll be walking on a path somewhere, and if you do Govardhan Parikrama, they have beautiful, at least on the first part of the Parikrama, they have very nice paths going through a bit of trees. And now they're very soft. They used to be full of thorns. Now they're soft. So it's this beautiful walk. And so sometimes when I'll be walking somewhere that's similar, I'll be thinking, oh, this is like Govardhan. So it's very purifying to remember Govardhan, to remember Jamuna. So we can do that. What's going on for Mahaprabhu is much different. He's thinking of this in intense love. Hare Krishna. Anyway, it's however you can translate this into your life in a way that is real for you and it doesn't violate any standard principles of bhakti, then we can adopt it. Like we were saying in the last class, if we can feel some separation for the holy dham, separation for the devotees, if we can muster up that feeling, it's not the feeling Mahaprabhu has, but it's a feeling that will help us, because separation causes remembrance in a more focused way. That's the whole idea, right? When you're separated from something, you're more focused on remembering it. And in the transcendental realm, remembering something is the same as that thing you remember. So you're actually in Vrindavan when you're remembering Vrindavan. And that's why. It's said about Mahaprabhu, you're always in Vrindavan because your heart's always there. So where your heart is, that's where you live. Not necessarily where your body lives. So we want to live in separation. That's good. Yes. Why not? Sometimes we as Prabhupada disciples, we feel separation from Prabhupada, but we specifically feel separation from the times Prabhupada was here, just in general. And we will think of, oh yeah, I remember that time that Prabhupada was here at this temple, and this happened and that happened, and I was there. And you feel separation because you realize that can't happen. It's a time in history that's over, and it's a time that was special. And you remember that special time, and you remember that special feeling, and that connects you with Prabhupada. So that's good, right? Good or good? Good or great? Ecstatic or ecstatic. Yeah. Or maybe you went to a kirtan mela or Rath Yatra or something, and it was really beautiful, and you remember that. That's purifying. Or you remember a relationship you had with a devotee. That's purifying. You're remembering a devotee. Even remembering prasadam. Oh, this prasadam I had. It was so special. I never forgot. I never forgot the taste of that and how that invoked my Krishna consciousness. Any kind of remembrance of devotional service, devotees, devotional events, it's all non-different from Krishna, isn't it? Isn't that our philosophy? So because it's non-different, we're becoming purified. So in that way, separation, if you can feel some separation, it's good. It'll help you think more about Krishna consciousness. Okay, we'll go on to the next. The next one is from Madhya Lila. This is chapter 23, text 58. This is the translation. We're just reading the translation. Highly advanced ecstasy is divided into two categories, Madan and Mohan. Meeting together is called Madan, and separation is called Mohan. So, as you can guess, meeting is required so that there can be separation. And the separation causes the intense desire to meet, so they nourish one another. So I'm separated and I want to meet. And then when I meet, I'm there with my beloved. And then so that association intensifies the separation. And then as we discussed previously, that sometimes separation is there when you're present with the person because you're thinking there's going to be separation. And you're already feeling separation even though they're with you. Like if someone that's very dear to you visits you and then it's the day they have to leave, you start feeling separation even while they're still there. You're driving them to the airport, you're feeling separation, they're leaving, but they're still there. So you can feel separation in their presence. It's a certain kind of separation, but meeting and separation nourish one another. It's part of the process. It's not that a devotee doesn't want to be with Krishna and just wants to be separated, but when they're separated, it seems like they're complaining about it, but really you never hear them complaining about it. It sounds like they're complaining about the separation, but they're not really complaining. You imagine like we can see in the material world. We don't have to imagine the material world. In the material world, we don't have to imagine that there is a lot of fear that we could lose our life, lose our loved ones, become ill, lose our possessions. There's lots of fear, or just fear. Sometimes meeting someone, I don't want to meet this person, I'm afraid of them, or I have to do an interview and I'm afraid I'll fail, or whatever it is. This fear pervades everything, right? And ultimately that fear, the underlying fear is the fear that we're going to leave, we'll be pulled out of here. And of course, we know that the way life goes, it's so up and down. You know, one day you feel good because you got a check in the mail, you know, tax return, now you're rich. The next day you get a bill for more than your tax return for some, you know, medical procedure that you did 24 years ago that you never paid, that they just caught up with you. Now you're depressed. So that actually just happened to me, but the insurance was supposed to pay for it, but I got this huge bill, so we'll find out. Yeah. So I was kind of like, it kind of ruined my day. I'm like, I can't pay for this. I'll be spending the rest of my life paying for this. Why didn't the insurance pay for it? So we know what the world is like. It's, you know, it's up and down, and nothing's perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. No relationship is perfect. We know that's the nature of this world. And some of us are already expecting, even if things are good, we're already expecting it won't stay this way. We know something's going to happen, right? Something's bound to happen to disrupt things. So imagine a world in which the opposite exists. There's no fear. Fear does not exist. There's no death, so there's no fear of dying. There's nothing known as misery or suffering. It does not exist. It doesn't, the atmosphere of that world, the energy of that world has no misery. It only has bliss. That's all there is. There's nothing but bliss. Try to imagine that existence. Okay, so we're living in this existence where it's only bliss. There's no fear. There's no anxiety. Nothing's going to be taken away. Everything is perfect. And then in that existence, we hear that someone is suffering separation. So we have to qualify the word suffering. Now, what does that mean, that they're actually suffering? Because if I say the word suffering, I can relate to lots of things, right? A stomach ache, the time my girlfriend left me when I was 17, crying on the street. The time someone stole my guitar and I never got it back. This actually happened. If I were to buy that guitar today, it would cost nearly $3,000. And my so-called friend just took it and left. And when I went back to get it, he was gone. So this kind of suffering that we read about, we have to redefine it as intensified meditation on Krishna. And which means intensive. If you're intensely thinking of Krishna, you can't suffer. It's not possible, right? Could you imagine, like, Prabhu, how are you doing today? And say, I was totally absorbed in thinking of Krishna all day. I'm completely miserable. No, it's not possible. And you would be very blissful. Even if you're suffering the pain of separation, we have to take it in a way that in the spiritual world, there are apparent dualities, but there are no dualities because it's only ecstasy. So the apparent suffering and separation it's not really separation because you can't be separated from the person that you're always thinking of. The person that's in your heart that you love, you can never be separated from them, but it only can appear that you're separated, and that appearance of separation it actually increases your pleasure. So that's the underlying assumption we have to make when we read about these pastimes. So getting back to the verse, in light of what we just said, the devotee desires to meet because they're feeling separation, so they desire to meet Krishna. That's definitely is there. I want to be with Krishna. I'm separated. And that meeting must be there for the separation to be felt more intensely. So it's a process. So if we now can learn to turn separation into ecstasy and learn to feel Krishna's presence in his holy name, in Srimad Bhagavatam and so forth, then we'll never feel separation, even though we'll feel separation. Like we were discussing the first or second class on separation, that Prabhupada said, I always feel that I'm with my spiritual master. I never felt that I was separate from him. And there's a poem that Prabhupada wrote called Viraha Ashtakam. Viraha means separation, Ashta means 8. And so 8 verses, Ashtakam. 8 verses of separation. So here Prabhupada saying he's writing a poem of 8 verses of separation. Each verse lamenting the separation from his guru, explaining why he feels separated. And then he's saying, my guru is always with me. So go chew on that today. How can that exist? My guru is always with me, but I'm feeling separation. It can't exist because it's an emotion within the heart that he's with me, but I long for that time when we were together, serving together, long for that time when I was sitting at his feet hearing, and he was pushing on this movement. Naturally, that separation will be there. He's gone. but we're together in service. So they can exist simultaneously on a transcendental platform. So it's not like material separation, where feeling separation, you might just become depressed and give up. But that separation that we feel from Guru and Krishna, if it's genuine, will inspire. It will inspire us. Hare Krishna. Okay, so let's continue. This is from the Madhya Lila 2362. In conjugal love, Shringara, there are two departments, meeting and separation. On the platform of meeting, there are unlimited varieties that are beyond description. So many rasas and tastes and etc. that we cannot imagine. So again, it's not like the devotee doesn't want to meet Krishna. The devotee does. But at the same time, the feelings that one gets in separation are more intense. So these are ideas that right now we just digest, we hear, and our head may spin, and we may think, I don't really understand this. And that's okay. Just digest it. Just think about it. And as you advance in devotional service, you'll understand, because there are going to be things in devotional service that can only be understood. Many things in devotional service that can only be understood through purification. They can't be understood any other way. Hare Krishna. Sounds like my voice is leaving me again. I got it back yesterday, and now today it's gone away. Okay. So we're going to read now from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And this is a summary of the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Prabhupada wrote, I think, in 1968. And Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, it's interesting that we got it in 1968. It's a very elevated book because it's Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Prabhupada gave this to his very young devotees. That's interesting. The different rasas are divided into two kinds of ecstasy called yoga and viyoga, or meeting and separation. In friendship and parenthood, the feelings of meeting and separation are various. Let's read. I don't know if what follows is an explanation. I think it's different. Okay. Different kinds of meeting, different kinds of separation, different kinds of emotions, according to the rasa that one has. And of course, we understand that whatever the gopis are feeling, it is always the most intense because their love is most intense. So the gopis are put on a pedestal as the ideal of love of Krishna, because there's no tinge of any personal desire or personal anything other than just Krishna. I want to make you happy, that's all. Or if they're servants of Radha, just to serve Radha so she can enhance her service to Krishna. So Bhagavatam, and especially the Goswamis and our acharyas, always point us in the direction of the gopis and said, here, this is the emblem of pure bhakti. This is the standard. This is what we put as the benchmark of pure devotional service. This is our goal. And then you may ask, does that mean they're asking us to aspire to a relationship with Krishna in Madhurya Ras? Someone may say yes, because that is true, almost 100%. That's what they're trying to do. But at the same time, when I say almost 100%, they're not going to deny anyone who has another relationship. But so let's say a devotee is attracted to friendship more than conjugal love. But the emblem of the gopis is still the ideal because it's the highest form of devotion. And so they will have the highest form of separation because they have the highest form of love. Obviously, the more intense the love, the more intense the separation. So when we hear about the gopis, we're meant to understand the nature of pure love so that when we hear about their relationship with Krishna, we don't mistake that for the love between ordinary men and women, because it is anything but that. It is entirely not that. And to benefit our hearts, we have to enter into those pastimes with that understanding that here is the highest manifestation of love that can ever exist anywhere in the universe. That is between the gopis and Krishna, and ultimately between Radha and Krishna. And here, as Mahaprabhu is exhibiting Radharani's love, what he is exhibiting, there's nothing higher than that. And so when we make that, we approach those leelas with that understanding, this has nothing to do with any mundane sexual lust. Then we can benefit tremendously by hearing about the pure love of the gopis. But if we see it in any way as material, then we shouldn't even hear it because we'll become polluted by it. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but unfortunately, in India, and you know, India is such a unusual place that things happen in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Apasiddhanta, Apasampradaya. Things happen that, you really, I think for many of us, we couldn't really imagine how you could get this understanding from Srimad Bhagavatam that they get. But it's the nature of material conditioning that some so-called devotees, when they hear about the gopis' pastimes, their conclusion is that they should do the same thing. That's how they'll become Krishna conscious or purified. They should imitate Krishna. That's their conclusion. And they actually do that as their sadhana. Get their own gopis as necessary for their purification. So we listen to that and we think, no, they don't think like that, do they? Nobody thinks like that, do they? And they do. They actually do. So that's why in hearing the Bhagavatam, especially the 10th canto, and especially about the gopis, there's always this caution that one has to understand this exactly philosophically what this is, and one has to be free personally from lust, so they won't identify with Krishna and Radha as they might identify with a member of the opposite sex. And so then when you enter into that mood, then that pure love of the gopis will affect your heart, and you'll begin to understand it and gradually imbibe it. And so whether your aspiration is for Madhurya Ras, or you don't even know yet, but let's assume most devotees listening to this are not thinking about, am I a gopi or a coward boy? But whatever you are, that hearing about the pure devotion of the gopis will enhance whatever relationship you have. So they're our ideals, and therefore the separation they will feel will always be the most intense because their love is most intense. And so as the love intensifies, as you go up the rasas, it intensifies, and then separation, that feeling, that ecstasy will be more intense. And because the gopis have the most intense feelings, the most pure love, they're always worshipped as the best devotees. And we should follow in their footsteps because their love is beyond the love of anyone else. But some of the coward boys have love similar to the gopis in that way, Yashoda also. But of course, the gopis have that fully. And so the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were gopis, manjaris, and they generally direct us who are their followers, Rupanugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. They generally direct us in that direction to develop that. But not everyone will necessarily want to or be in that rasa. but still the gopis are emblems, are exemplars of pure bhakti. Okay, so we can read the next. This is from chapter 14 of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The external features exhibited on the bodies of devotees are called Udbhashvara. The Vyabhichari symptoms are 33 in number. And they are primarily, they primarily involve words uttered by the devotee and different bodily features. In other words, the symptoms of ecstasy manifest in different bodily features and things devotees will say, or how they laugh or scream or yell or faint. The different bodily features such as dancing, trembling, and laughing, when mixed with Vyabhichari symptoms, are called sanchari. When bhava, you won't necessarily understand this even after reading it 100 times, but I'm just going to read it. When bhava, anubhava, and Vyabhichari symptoms are combined, they make the devotee dive into the ocean of immortality. The ocean is called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service. And one who is merged in that ocean is always wrapped in transcendental pleasure on the waves and sounds of that ocean. Particular rasas, flavors, or tastes of the devotees who merge into that ocean of Bhakti Rasamrita are known as neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, and conjugal love. Conjugal love is very prominent, and it is symptomized by the devotees decorating his body to attract Krishna. The flavor of servitorship increases to include affection, anger, fraternity, and attachment. The flavor of friendship increases to include affection, anger, fraternity, attachment, and devotion. And in parenthood, the attachment increases to include affection, anger, fraternity, attachment, and devotion. There are also special flavors experienced in friendship with the Supreme Lord, and they are manifest by friends such as Subala, whose devotion increases up to the point of bhava. The different rasas are also divided into two kinds of ecstasy called yoga and viyoga, meeting and separation. In friendship and parenthood, the feelings of meeting and separation are various. Well, that sounds like an expansion of what we just read. So, just to give a brief, basic understanding, when we experience intense emotions, they manifest physically. Sometimes if the emotions are really intense, you could faint, or you could feel sick, or you could get goosebumps, or you could shiver. What if someone said the doctor said you're going to die in an hour? You can imagine what your body would go through. Now, your mind would affect your body, or somebody died, your best friend died, and then you find out, actually they didn't die. They were in the hospital, and for a moment they thought they died, but they came back. Imagine how you would feel. What would your body do, right? You'd be jumping up and down, hit the ceiling. So the emotion of love of Krishna, or even bhava, the emotion is so intense, it affects the body. And so there are different symptoms. And there are symptoms that follow those symptoms, like you get a symptom and it generates another symptom. That's called anubhava, because bhava is emotion, anubhava means following. And these different emotions combine in various ways, and they are both symptoms of love, and there are also impetuses for further love. And you can read more about it in Nectar Devotion. You can read about it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described it in his book, Jaiva Dharma. And what I can say is you can read about it a lot, and even after reading about it, you'll be like, huh? What? It takes time to, these are completely transcendental, and it is like what the Goswamis did was they were analyzing what was happening. I think before them, this was not analyzed. It was just happening. Like someone, like that's academia. They analyze what's happening. So it's kind of what they did. They were analyzing what these ecstasies are and what causes them and how they manifested, then categorizing by symptoms and how these ecstasies develop and why they develop. So anyway, that's a whole topic, just so you know that it exists. You can read about it in CC, Nectar of Devotion, Jaiva Dharma, if you're interested. It's good. It's good to have some basic knowledge of this, because this is part of Krishna consciousness. This is what happens when a devotee loves Krishna. So it's good to know what you're getting yourself into that way, you can jump off the boat if you're afraid this is too intense. No, that way you will stay in the boat and you'll look forward to it. Even during difficult times, you look forward to this is, like the ecstasy you feel, like think of the best kirtan you ever had. And that ecstasy, you're jumping off the ground, your feet are never on the ground, and you and multiply that like 1,000,000, but not even 1,000,000, multiply it by 25. And then could you imagine what would happen to your body if it was 25 times that the greatest ecstasy you ever had in a kirtan? It would be like, you'd faint probably, right? Or bang your head against the wall. We hear about Mahaprabhu grinding his head till it was bleeding, right? Have you read about that in Gambhira? It's like banging his head, grinding his head. You think, why is he doing it? What's he doing? Well, okay, 25 times your greatest ecstasy, you'd probably be just on the floor banging your head, right? It's like your body can't contain it. And sometimes we have heard that the highest position you will attain in this body is bhava, because if you attain prema, the material body can't hold that love and you'll just die. It's like too intense. It's just like, sometimes when there's pain in the body, a person dies, it's because he can't stand the pain. So the soul just leaves to get free from the pain. So this ecstasy is so intense that the body can't handle it. And the soul leaves, yeah. Anyway, preview of coming attractions. This is what's waiting for you all. In spite of whatever you have to go through on a day-to-day basis, this is waiting for you, and it's not that far away, and we don't have to live that much longer before we can reunite with Krishna. So the Goswamis have taught us what's going on, and if it ever happens to you, then now you'll know, oh, that's Baba, oh, that's Anubhava, that's Vyabhichari, that's Sanchari. Because as you learn what it is, you'll realize. And as I've said many times, a lot of this happens to us, but it happens in a seed form, because it doesn't just go from 0 to 100. It's developing in a seed form. So we have heard Prabhupada say that bhakti is a development of faith, ado shraddha, tado sadhusanga, like that. It develops all the way up to prema. So it's a gradual development of faith. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur also gave it another perspective. He said it's a gradual development of bhava. So shraddha, it begins with shraddha, ado shraddha. He says that's a little bit of bhava. Sadhusanga, it's growing. Bhajana kriya, more bhav. So bhav is ecstasy. It's preliminary love of God. And as you go up, bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, you're developing. And then you get to the stage of bhav, and it's fully manifest. So every level of devotion, as you're increasing, you're actually increasing bhava in its seedling form, and then it becomes a full tree. So there is some feelings we get, some kind of emotion, something that's not material, something we've never experienced before, because we're getting a little bhava. But at the same time, this is the good news of Mahaprabhu, sometimes without any qualification, one can merge oneself into the Sankirtan movement, experience high levels of bhava, even when one is not on that stage, because that is the nature of Mahaprabhu's mercy. So that's why sometimes when you go into a kirtan and you say, well, the kirtan was amazing, I was feeling this, I was crying and ecstatic, and I felt like jumping through the ceiling. That is the gift of the holy name in Kali Yuga, that Mahaprabhu puts that bhava into the holy name so that we can experience it. And then after the kirtan, you kind of feel slowly like the helicopter's landing. Ooh. And then you become more back to what you're normally experiencing. But during that kirtan, it was like, how did that happen? And you feel like this was something given to me. So that's the nature of kirtan and Kali Yuga, that there is access to this very high level, yeah, albeit temporary, but access to this bhava even before we're on the stage of bhava. But in any case, you all have a little bhava in you, and it's growing as you grow in devotional service. And that's why you might experience some seed of some of these symptoms. And so when you read about them in the Shastra and you think, yeah, this is a stage far beyond me, that's true. But there may be some seeds of that now manifesting, because it must manifest gradually. That's even why we have the stage of bhava. It's not love yet. It's preliminary love. It's not the full love. So it has to grow that way, bit by bit by bit. So in the stage of ruchi, for example, there is a lot of bhava, but it's not full bhava. It's not the stage of bhava. You may manifest some symptoms of bhava, but they may not be permanent. In the stage of bhava, they're always there. Does that make sense? It's a stage. That means you're there. You got onto the 10th floor. Now you're on it. You may be going to the 5th floor and take a visit to the 10th floor and come back to the 5th floor. So that's kind of where we're at. We get glimpses of the 10th floor. But bhava is the 10th floor, and now you're on there, and you're not going down anywhere. That's your state. Well, you could go down, but generally you don't. So I hope that helps clear up some confusion. So I guess this continues, right? The highest perfection of Adi Rudha affection and conjugal love involve meeting, Madan, and separation, Mohan. In the ecstasy of Madan, meeting, there is kissing. In the ecstasy of Mohan, separation, there is Ud Purna Chitra Japa. So as I was saying, what you'll find in our literature, what the acharyas have done, is they've made very detailed analysis of what love is, what ecstasy is, what the stages of bhava are, and how these symptoms manifest. It's quite academic, actually. If you read anything by Bhaktivinoda, he'll say there are 5 divisions of this, and under each division there are 5 categories, and it's like an academic paper. And so they're just doing this very detailed analysis of what love of Krishna is, it's so beautiful, because as we know in other spiritual traditions, when you talk about love, it's quite vague. And like, what does it actually look like? In what are the symptoms? How would you know? Someone says, I love God. Well, how do you monitor that? What are the metrics of that love? How does it manifest? I think in other scriptures there are indications of it, but I am not aware that that's become popular knowledge. I've never heard anyone talk about it, other than maybe just general symptoms of compassion and so forth. But, the personal manifestations in the heart, the transformations in the body, these things are rarely explained, if at all. And so what it does is it shows us the intensity and the depth of what love is. As we were discussing, and Prabhupada saying, that when Prabhupada defines love of Krishna, he generally uses the last verse of Shishastakam as a standard definition. This is Radharani speaking. Krishna, you can treat me any way you want. As long as it makes you happy, that's all that matters. So that is the standard. And then the Goswamis and their followers have analyzed all the symptoms of that. Well, if that happens, how does it manifest? What does it look like? What does the devotee feel? What do they go through? If they're angry, what is that? If they're laughing, what is that? If they want to fight with Krishna, what is that? And so it's all categorized. as rasa, subrasa, different bhavas and anubhavas and so forth. So you may not understand it all, but it does definitely show us that somebody understands it, and that there is a science there. And you can categorize what love is. It's like, you remember the story of Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma? When Mahaprabhu went to see Jagannath, as the way the story is described, when he went to see Jagannath, he actually saw Jagannath. He saw Shama Sundar. And I was like, Shama Sundar. And as you could imagine, if you actually saw Krishna with love in your heart, it's pretty likely you would faint. You could expect that, right? So Mahaprabhu fainted. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought some cotton and put the cotton to his nose to see how he was breathing. And he analyzed that this was not fake. This was actually a symptom of ecstasy by the breathing. If I remember the story correctly. Does anyone remember that story? I think he did. It was like a doctor, you know, how he's still breathing, how easy breathing. It shows that this was not a fake, it was genuine ecstasy that he could understand. Isn't that interesting? He could understand this was, you know, a symptom of real ecstasy. So, you know, Prabhupada has always taught us, don't imitate the ecstasy. The Sahajiyas imitate, roll on the ground and cry. You know, you can fake all that. But there are real symptoms. So we read about it, we think about it and go, okay, I never knew what love of God is. I was raised Catholic. They never told me that you roll on the ground and scream. Now I know that's what you do when you love God. Or maybe sometimes you belch, or maybe sometimes your limbs go inside your body, or maybe you bang your head on the ground. I mean, I wouldn't tell this to BBC when they ask me what love of God is. They might think we're crazy, but it really helps us in defining the difference between sentimental love and what real love is and how it manifests. And so sometimes we saw in the person of Prabhupada that he would be overcome by ecstasy and kind of just turn off the world or just cry, or sometimes devotees said they could see his body was shaking. And so we got to see some of these symptoms, which Prabhupada tried desperately to not manifest, because that is the instruction of Shastra. But sometimes he couldn't hide them. So it's good that we saw that. We go, yeah, this is a symptom of love. This is what happens when you love God. You know, there are external symptoms like detachment and humility and so forth. But these are other symptoms. So we learn about them. It's there in the Shastra. The Goswamis want us to learn about them. So go ahead and learn about it. That's what we're supposed to do. Why not? Hare Krishna. And someday when you're ecstatic and you're rolling on the ground, you'll go, oh, jackpot, I got there. I'm good to go. I can die now. I got it. You know, in the second canto, it says like, what's up with your chanting if your hairs aren't standing on end and your heart's not melting? You know, like, what's that all about? And so what is the Bhagavatam saying? It's saying, well, if you're chanting the holy name and your heart isn't melting and your hairs aren't standing on end and your throat isn't choked and there's no tears in your eyes, then you must be making offenses to the holy name. Because those are all symptoms of bhava. And so if you're chanting properly, then all the symptoms of bhava should manifest. So, you know, the symptoms are there. They're exhibited by pure devotees. We can't deny it. The Goswamis categorized it, analyzed it, divided it so we could better understand it. And it helps us, right? Yes, helps us understand. This is prema. This is what it's all about. Hare Krishna. Okay. So let's read some more things you won't understand. There's one more sentence there, right? The ecstasy exhibited before the lover and beloved meet. The ecstasy experienced between them after meeting. State of mind experienced by not meeting and the state of mind experienced after meeting, fearing separation, is called vipralamba. Vipralamba means separation. So don't you find this interesting? Prabhupada's saying, okay, before they meet is separation. Yeah, that we can understand. Then he's saying, after they meet, he must mean after they meet and then they go away, separation. And then by not meeting, obviously, separation. Yeah, so there's a lot of separation in the relationship, right? You're not together, you're together, then you leave, now you're separated. So there's a lot of separation. Okay. So let's read this one more and then we can see if there's questions or comments. This is from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 14 as well. There are two kinds of dresses worn in that relationship of conjugal love. They are called Sambhoga and Vipralamba. On the Sambhoga platform, the dresses are unlimited. Sambhoga means meeting. And on the Vipralamba, there are 4 in number. The ecstasy exhibited before the lover and beloved meet. So we just read this. The ecstasy experienced between them after meeting. The state of mind experienced by not meeting and the state of mind experienced after meeting, fearing separation, are called Vipralamba. So Vipralamba is pretty much, it's kind of intertwined in all the relationships you have with Krishna, because even while meeting, there's fear of being separated. That Vipralamba serves as a nourishing element for future meetings. When the lover and beloved meet, all of a sudden, when the lover and beloved meet, all of a sudden and embrace one another, they feel an ecstasy of happiness. And the state of mind they experience in that ecstasy is called Sambhoga. According to the situation, Sambhoga ecstasy is known also by 4 names: Sankshipta, Sankirna, Sampanna, and Samriddhiman. Such symptoms are also visible during dreams. In Prema Vilas, there are 2 kinds of emotional activities: separation and meeting. That transcendental separation is so acute that is actually more ecstatic than meeting. So that's reconfirmation. Separation is more ecstatic. And so here are just analysis of 4 kinds of separation and 4 kinds of meeting, but those 4 kinds of meeting are not explained in any detail. So again, it's not that the devotee is not trying to meet Krishna. It's not that the devotee is trying to be separated from Krishna. But as Prabhupada said, it is more ecstatic than meeting. Hare Krishna. So try to remember that, everyone, because I know I can guarantee that none of you think separation is more ecstatic than meeting, because you've all told me 1,000,000 times it's not. Because I always get that when I visit. Why do you have to go? Can't you just stay here? And well, when you come, you have to go as part of the program. So, and I say something like, but actually, separation is more ecstatic than meeting, and everybody gives me a dirty look. Like, how could you say that? You're so not empathetic to say such a thing. So I don't say that anymore when I'm leaving. I just cry with them, have a crying party, then it's okay. So, but let's remember this. You may not understand it completely, but separation is more ecstatic than meeting. Hare Krishna. So you have any questions or comments? And maybe Chaitanya Dasi, maybe you can point out the questions, because they're all kind of mixed, if there are any, mixed in with what you wrote. Okay. Scarlett wanted to explain why she shaved her head. Some disease she has, so she's not. Well, I don't think anyone would think you're trying to imitate a gopi because the gopis had long hair. They might think you're like become a sannyasi or something. You know? Prabhupada said women cannot take sannyas. Okay, is there any comments yet? Or questions? Down, go down. Down, 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 down. Going around a preaching center, yeah. You walk around the deities, it's like circumambulating the universe. What about fear of being born again? Well, when one becomes a devotee and one gives their life to Krishna, then the devotee has no more concern about their future because they know their future is in Krishna's hands. As I'm giving my life to Krishna, he will take care of me. If he wants me to go back to Godhead, I will go. If he wants me to come back and for more purification, I will take that. But I'm always it's now not under karma, it's under divine protection. So that now that I've taken shelter of Prabhupada, I'm on the path of going back to Godhead. If not this life, then another life. But if I'm chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 principles and trying to be sincere and doing my best, then why not this life? That's the faith of a devotee. So therefore, devotee has no fear that whatever his future is, it's now in the hands of Krishna and he's being taken care of by Krishna as long as the devotee is following. So therefore, for us dying, it's not really a big problem. It's just another step on the way. And in fact, for us, in some cases, dying can be like, oh, finally I get to go back to Godhead. I've been waiting for this my whole life. And the doctor says you're going to die tomorrow. You go, thank you. It's over. I'm going back to Godhead. So it's more a devotee can feel like that. Of course, if a devotee has service or a devotee has responsibility for other devotees, then the devotee may think, well, I don't want to go. I have service. But just speaking generally, if the warning is there that I have to go, for a devotee, it's like, wow, that means I get to go back to Godhead sooner, right? I don't have to wait so long. I always joke with people because we know that nobody wants to die. Although, there's a saying, everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Well, you got to die to go to heaven. So, but everyone would like to live longer. Like if you ask someone, would you like to live longer? They go, well, how long would you like to live? And they might say, well, I don't really want to die hundreds of years, thousands of years. So I joke with people, I say, well, think about it. And this is really a great way to get people to think about the nature of material life. So let's say the person said, I want to live 500 years. And let's say the person is 50 years old. So they're going to live, let's say another 450 years. Of those 450 years, they're probably going to have to work for 430 years. And then they can retire maybe in the last 20. So I just say, do you realize what you just said? You don't want to die, you want to live 500 years. You're going to have to work, or if it's another 500, you're going to have to work like another 480 years or 470. Is that like, you okay with that? And if they think about it, I think many people will think, oh, I didn't think about that. So in that sense, dying is in a sense a relief because you don't have to work anymore. I mean, unless you love your job, which I think 80+% people don't. So for the 80% of the people that don't love their job, it's telling them you're going to have to work that job for another 475 years. It's kind of scary. And if you are going to live another 500 years, think how many accidents you'll get into. You know, how many broken bones, fractures, sprains, stomach aches, you know, close calls, car accidents, you know, it just increases, right? So it's a very good way to get people kind of a reality check on what is the nature of this world and what is the nature of your desire to live longer. Of course, I'm sure some people would say, you know, life is great and I want to live as long as I could. Yeah, I'd say, okay, but what if you like break your leg and it never heals? And so for another 475 years, you're limping around. Or what if you have to have it amputated? You know, it's like, you know, the prospect of living long sounds worse and worse when you think of the potential suffering you could undergo, isn't it? So anyway, back to the question again, for us as devotees, our life is in the hands of Prabhupada, so we're not worried about dying. We know whatever happens is we're taken care of. That's it. If we do what Prabhupada asked us to do, he's the guarantor. We're guaranteed to become Krishna conscious sooner or later. And there was a story, I think it was Allen Ginsberg was asking Prabhupada about Kali Yuga and like, will there be devotees at the end of Kali Yuga? And Prabhupada said, no, they'll all have gone back to Godhead. They're not going to be hanging around the end of Kali Yuga. So if you're a devotee, Prabhupada is already saying you're not going to be here that long. It's not like you follow Prabhupada and he just, you know, the process doesn't work and he's not potent and he can't really help you and, you know, you've just got bad karma. No, you follow the process. He guarantees, he takes care of you. You're not going to be around long. But that's our faith. So that's why we're not so afraid of dying. I mean, we're afraid of dying more for the people who are going to miss us than ourselves. Because once you die, you know, if you go back to Krishna, you're having a blast. You're having a party, you know, like you're not lamenting. You're lamenting for the people who aren't going with you. You know, it's like, oh, you're dying. It's like, come with me. Why don't you all come with me? We'll all go back to God. Like, oh, my Guru Maharaj cursed me to die. You know, he wants me to die with him. You know, what kind of, you know, blessing is that? No, let's all go back to Godhead. We've been here long enough. We don't need to be here any longer. We've done everything we need to do. We don't have to like, I just want to buy this one thing before I die because I never had one. I just want to get a yacht, you know, because it's so cool and I want to sail around, you know. No. We've done everything multiple times. We just can't remember. And so now Prabhupada wants us to finish our business, just go back to Godhead. And we take shelter of him. That's it. Keep it simple. You know, if you say, Mahatma Prabhu, how do you play Mridanga? I go, just pick it up and play it, because that's what I did. And you say, I can't do that. I go, okay, find a teacher, learn how to do it. So I don't know how to go back to Godhead. Prabhupada just says, this. Okay. Your Mridanga teacher says, this, you'll be a great Mridanga player. You just follow it. And then a few weeks later, you're playing in the kirtan. Okay. Prabhupada, this. That's our faith. Okay. I have a question from Sydney. Feelings of separation aren't good or happy feelings. So is the goal to, I got this. How do you get, I got a new computer with a new version of, hold on a second. This little thing comes up and blocks what you're saying. Wait a minute. Okay. Feelings of separation are good or happy feelings. So is the goal to, can't see that. What's that word there? I can't get this little box off. The goal to, with detachment, change our minds and how separation feels, or train our minds to understand it differently, therefore feel it. Well, the first premise is, what you're saying is the feelings of material separation are good. Feelings of spiritual separation aren't good. So the answer is change it to spiritual separation, then it'll feel good. If it's material separation, is coming from material attachment, so it doesn't feel good. Because the thing you're materially attached to is what's giving you pleasure. So if you lose it, then you lose your pleasure, right? Yes? So feelings of separation are very good. That's what we've been talking about. Feelings of separation from material things are due to material attachment. So naturally you will feel anxiety and fear, thinking I will lose this, lose that. Well, here's the news. We're going to lose everything sooner or later anyway. It's just a question of what date it comes out on our calendar. So somehow we're thinking, well, if I lose it in 25 years, it's going to be easier than if I lose it tomorrow. It may be harder in 25 years because you may be more attached. So the way I look at everything in the material world is like, at some point, we're going to lose it or it's going to lose us. In other words, they're going to die first or we're going to die first. Or, someone's going to take something I'm attached to. Right? It happens all the time, right? You go on your husband's, I'm not saying you, Sydney, you go on your husband's phone and you find out he's got a girlfriend. Whoa, you're losing your husband. Or vice versa. So, and even if he doesn't, you will die or he will die. This is like, I know it's depressing, but it's just the nature of the world. So in my contemplation, I think, well, if you're going to lose everything, it's really stupid to be attached to it, because then you're really going to suffer when you lose it. Whereas if you can't be totally detached. Obviously, that would be weird to be detached from people close to you. But as long as you're not so attached that you suffer tremendously when you lose them or they lose you, then you're better off. And that's the way you can live in the material world with the least trouble and misery. Just don't get too attached. Because, it's like getting attached to a hotel room. It's like, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to stay there. And I even had this realization, Sydney, before I was a devotee. I could understand this before I was a devotee. Like you got to be balanced in your level of attachment, detachment, because you can't control things. And you may fall in love with this person, and a week later, you may see them walking around with another lover. It's like, so, if you allow yourself to go crazy and madly in love with them, you could suffer tremendously. So you can't artificially be detached, but intellectually you can understand that some level of balanced detachment is healthy. And devotees always ask the question about, well, should I be attached to my kids, or is it wrong, or this or that? And I think we answered that question the other day when P asked the question about, attachment. And we said that, whatever you think of at the time of death is where you go, and what you're most attached to is what you think of. So that's why when we say don't become too attached to anything, because we're trying to become attached to Krishna, and if we're attached to other things, it gets in the way. And then we don't want to die thinking of, the guitar I never had, and become a tree or a piece of steel or something in my next life. Oh, I wanted that guitar made out of maple wood, and you're born a maple tree in your next life. Who knows, right? I mean, Prabhupada has said such things. Prabhupada, he said about, I think, Nehru, that he took birth as a dog in Sweden. Some astrologer said that, it's like, I mean, the laws of karma work, that story of Jad Bharat is just to scare us a bit. Like, you could become a deer if that's what you think of. Prabhupada used to joke the hippies will become cockroaches because they're so dirty. I think he once said, yeah, you're so attached to this house, in your next life, you'll become a cockroach in that house. And then Prabhupada said there was a man, an astrologer said he was born again. And he went back to the house. He was the father, went back to the house. Of course, nobody knew him, and they beat him up and shoot him out. Get out of here. So how true these stories are or aren't, that these things can possibly happen. So, but the main idea is that I'm in this world to become Krishna conscious. And if I allow myself to become too attached to anything in this world, that's going to inhibit my ability to be Krishna conscious. And I might have that on my mind rather than Krishna, because whatever I'm the most attached to is going to be on my mind. Right? So that's the idea. That's the idea. Balance it. Oh yeah. Now I got rid of the box. Wow. Us old guys, it takes a while to figure these things out. Takes one of you. Takes a 7-year-old Chinese girl to tell me how to do these. That's the joke amongst us old people. If you can't figure out how to use your new phone, just find a 7-year-old Chinese girl. She'll show you how to do it. Probably now she doesn't have to be Chinese. Anybody. Hare Krishna. All right, what else? Anything else? We have a verse here from Felipe Martinez, also known as the one and only Chilean. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from such lust, anger arises. Yeah, so it's like, be careful what you become attached to, because whatever you become attached to, you become obsessed with, right? Have you ever been obsessed with getting something? Like even something simple? I'm not a woman, so, but I would imagine if I were, I might get obsessed over a pair of earrings that I saw on Amazon. Like, I have to have them, dream about them or something. It's possible, right? Is it possible, ladies? I mean, I live with 2 women, so I never saw my wife get that obsessed, but I could imagine it could happen. With us guys, we get obsessed over bigger things like cars and musical instruments and 25-foot screens and things like that, and speakers that are like 80 feet high. So we also get obsessed about something, right? Or a camera, you're a photographer, you get obsessed with, I have to have this. So when Prabhupada was asked these questions, his answers were always interesting, because he never answered the question like, just become completely detached, because you can't become completely detached. This is going to sound funny, and I'll explain it. You can't become completely detached unless you are completely detached. So like, I can't say, Jyotirmai, you should become completely detached from this. That's not going to happen unless she becomes a paramhamsa, and nothing in this world will attract her. But when we say you shouldn't become attached before you're on this very elevated level, we just say, be careful about what you become attached to, because it's going to attract your mind. So we just say, be careful not to become more attached to things that aren't Krishna than are, the things that potentially could cause some disruption in your spiritual life. Just balance, just be balanced. We can't say, don't be attached to anything, because as conditioned souls, we will be, but be attached in a way that you're detached, right? Does that make sense? That be attached, you're going to be attached anyway, but not in a way that's controlling your life, right? Not in a way that it controls you, but you control it. And the thing you want to control your life is Krishna. So you become as attached as you want to Krishna. Let him control your life. Not only women get obsessed, men especially get obsessed about women. And fancy cars. And big, expensive watches. What else, Gopinath? Guitars, right? You get obsessed about guitars. And whatever your hobby is, or if you're a golfer and you get obsessed with the latest golf club, isn't it? Whatever it is, surfer, the newest kind of surfboard. And most guitarists that are into guitar have 10 to 20 guitars, right? That's just like normal. You think, why do you need so many guitars? They're all a little different. And sometimes they'll buy the same guitar, just like a different model by the same company, almost identical, but it's slightly different. So these are obsessions. You know, that's the Western world. We all have too much money. So we can get obsessed by lots of things, right? You want to buy some earphones? Go online. You get obsessed about which kind to buy. I just found a pair for like $270. They're really good. I didn't buy them, but if you're into good audio, you can buy them. You get obsessed and you wear them, and you know, the rest of your life, you never take them out. You don't talk to anybody, you know. So, yeah, that's what it means. So we have another verse. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when having renounced all material desires. He neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive work. Yeah. So then you see, when you're not attached, then you can use everything for Krishna. Like he can give you the whole world and you can use it because it's not going to cause you a problem. But you know, sometimes if you get certain things that'll cause you a problem, it's better you don't get them, right? Because you're not ready to use them. So you're not, it'll cause you an obsession. So better don't do it. Correct? Am I depressing you all? You all look so serious, depressed. Oh my God, I can't get attached to anything. This is the most depressing class I've heard all year. Hare Krishna. Yeah. The living entities in this conditional world are my fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Yeah, so the conclusion is you can make life easy on yourself, right? You can, you know, try to make life easier on yourself. So if you allow yourself to become overly attached, then you have to become detached. So you have to like put all this energy into fighting your attachment. Whereas if you just balanced it, then you'd be okay, right? I can tell you that I'm attached to many things, but I'm attached to how I can use them in service. But then that attachment is okay. Like this microphone I have. This is a very good microphone. I got this microphone for like half the price. And I think it was refurbished or it was returned to a store. And I was doing my guided meditations for japa, and I thought I want to get a really good mic. That sounds really good. So then I got this mic, and then we did some recordings, and I thought it sounded really nice. And so I really attached to this mic because it sounds, it got the sound that I wanted for guided meditations, which should be relaxing and warm, and you know, and I think it has that nice effect. And so I'm attached to this mic, but I'm not attached to it for sense gratification. I'm attached to it for service because it helps me in my service. So that attachment is completely transcendental. It's not going to cause me to die thinking about this mic. How will I leave this world? I'm going to lose my microphone. You know, right? You have this beautiful Mercedes van. It's decked out. It's got a shower. It's got a kitchen, storage, and you use this for traveling Sankirtan. It's like, and you're completely attached to this van because it's the perfect van for distributing books and traveling. And so you're attached, but that's a different attachment. So that's how you deal with attachment to things you like. Let's say like Annapurna is an artist. So she wants to get the most expensive brushes. Like I need these brushes and they're really expensive, but these are like and then she saves her money and she gets them like, yeah, the expensive ones. Because if you get the lousy ones, you just throw them away anyway. So you get the best ones. So she's attached to those brushes, but she's attached. She's not like doing portraits of herself every day and putting it on Facebook. She's painting Krishna. So she's attached to that brush for Krishna's service. So that's completely different. I have so many things that I'm attached to, but I'm attached because they facilitate service, right? So if somebody says, "Can I have that?" I go, "No, you can't have it. I need that for service." If it was for my sense gratification, then I might really get angry. How dare you ask me for that? I'll pick it up and knock you in the head with it. You'll never get that from me. I couldn't live without this. I would go crazy. Yeah, so we don't want to evolve to that point. But if you're attached to using it in Krishna, it doesn't have all the material side effects that normal material attachment has, right? Yeah, so we got a message in Spanish now. I have to translate it. Gopinath says, I would like to not fight against attachment. I believe the best way is to include other more positive attachments instead of fighting against the current ones. Positive, yeah. Positive means, what do you mean by positive? That helps you. Then if it's attachment and it helps you, then strictly speaking, in the sense we use the word attachment, it wouldn't be considered an attachment in that sense because it's spiritual in nature. You know, when you say, attachment is, this has got to be a stumbling block to your bhakti. It's like, got to get in the way, It's like, say, someone may say, Mahatma Prabhu, you're attached to your wife. Well, should I be totally detached? If I'm totally detached, I won't even talk to her. It's like, you want to talk? No. You want to do something? No. You want to come into the house and hang out? No. That would be a little weird, right? So even if I were completely detached for social interaction, I can't act that way externally, right? That would work. So that's something you're going to have to learn when you actually become completely detached. You can't act in a completely detached way because you won't be able to function. And that's there in the Bhagavatam in the Priyavrata story. He was married, but he was completely detached. He didn't want to marry, but he didn't act like he was detached because he did his duty as a faithful and loving father and husband. So he was actually a better husband than most men, although he was completely detached. So even if you are detached, but you have a duty, you have to learn how to balance it. It's an interesting story to study. It actually says he had no attachment to his children or his wife, but he was the best husband and best father because he did it as a duty. So we would wrongly think if I'm detached, then I'm detached from everything. I was just, I have no attachment to my wife, so packing my bags today, that's it. Leave her a note and I'm gone. Nice knowing you. That's not the detachment we're trying to cultivate. And Gopinath says, I could say that everything is used in service, and then it's a trap. Yeah, you could. That's true. But then you're lying to yourself. So if you're lying to yourself, then God save you. But if you're honest, then you can look at something and go, yeah, this is going to be my nemesis. This is going to kill me if I do this. Then you're honest about it, and then you can say, okay, I got to be careful, right? You ever hear Prabhupada saying his story? He said, I didn't really like my wife, and I wanted to remarry. Did you ever hear Prabhupada say that? He said, I wanted to marry a white woman and have a white child. I don't know if he was serious or not, but anyway, he told the story. And his father said, it's good that you're not attached to your wife because that way you'll be attached to Krishna. You'll be more attached to Krishna than your wife. So if you're overly attached to something, it's not healthy and you pretend you're not, that's not good because, you're naturally going to be attached to so many things. We're conditioned souls, but we just have to be careful that they don't become stumbling blocks. Like sometimes your attachment is actually going to help you. So let's say, Gopinath, You meet this woman, you get along really well, and you're very attached to her. By becoming attached to her, you become detached from all other women in the universe. So that attachment helps you. So you got to put everything in context. It's like, or like Gopinath is dreaming about getting this guitar that he can't stop thinking about it, right? He's like, I got to get this guitar. And this guitar is like $2,000 and he's saving, $100 every month. And in 2 years, he's going to get it. And and he can't stop thinking about it. And he asked me what I should do. And I just go, just buy the damn guitar and stop thinking about it, And then he gets it and he plays it. And it's like, and he's happy. And it's like, after a while, it's like, yeah, it's just a guitar. I mean, it's a good guitar. I like it, but it's, and then it's just like, okay, I don't need another guitar now. This is like such a good guitar. I couldn't get a better guitar. So sometimes you have to pursue your attachment to become detached. It's just like that desire is so strong. And so if Gopinath finds this woman and he says, I don't want to get attached to her. And I say, no, you better get attached to her, because if you're not attached to her, you're going to get attached to some other woman. So it's better you're attached to her. So that's good, right? So that attachment causes you to become detached from all other women. So that's a bona fide attachment, which stabilizes you in Krishna consciousness. So that attachment is good, right? So you can use attachment in a good way also. So you have to look at all sides of it. That's why there's that book, Strengthening the Bonds That Free Us, like strengthening the marriage, because the marriage ultimately purifies us. So become attached, make it work. And it's like I always give this example of that I ate halva last night. I rarely eat halva. It was just on my plate. I wouldn't have put it on my plate, but someone gave it to me. And why don't I eat halva? Because I ate so much halva as a brahmachari. It's like, okay, I've had enough halva. They'll last me the next 10 lives. So it's like you have this amazing marriage and this amazing family and everything's great. At the end of your life, you go, that was great, but not as good as my relationship with Krishna. But it fulfilled that desire, and then you become detached by having it. So that attachment purifies you. So it's good. Okay, we're going to end here. And now we'll become attached to chanting. We have more. Should we be attached to our service or shouldn't we? Yeah, you can be attached to your service until it's taken away from you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari.